Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive from the Morss Global Finance podcast team. I'm John, and with me today, as always, is Tiffany, our expert. We're diving into the world of BGASC, and a company that's been kind of making some noise in the precious metals investing world. And, you listeners have sent us a ton of material on BGASC, company info details on their IRAs, even customer reviews. So, Tiffany, what's our mission today? What are we trying to figure out?
Well, John, our mission today is to really help our listeners figure out if BGASC is the right fit for their investment journey. It's interesting, BGASC seems to offer a really wide range of products, everything from, your classic gold and silver coins to things like that most people haven't even heard of.
Like copper bullets.
Clipper bullets. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. But I think we need to back up a little bit first. For maybe some of our listeners who haven't heard of this company, what exactly is BGASC and why should our listeners care? Yeah, so they've very quickly become a major player in the U.S. precious metals market. Since they were founded back in 2012, their focus seems to be on really providing that broad selection of products we were just talking about, but also combining that with excellent customer service, fast shipping, and transparent pricing. They're really going for that trustworthy source image, especially for newer investors.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think precious metals can seem intimidating to a lot of people. So they're kind of saying, hey, we're the good guys, come invest with us. But do they actually walk the walk?
Well, that's what we're here to figure out.
Yeah.
One thing that really jumped out at me when I was looking at all this material was their A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau. Plus, they're members of all the big industry organizations for coin grading and trading. And, those aren't just handed out.
No, they're not. So it sounds like they've got the credentials. But, I want to talk about what they're actually selling. You mentioned copper billets, which is pretty wild. But let's start with the basics, like what kind of gold can you get from BGAC?
Yeah, so, they have the American Eagles, which I think everybody knows and recognizes. But what's really interesting is that they also offer kangaroos from Australia and Krugerrands from South Africa.
Now, are those purely for collectors, or do those also have investment value?
They actually have both. They can be great additions to a portfolio, especially for someone who is looking for international diversification. For instance, kangaroos are known for their beautiful designs, but they're also highly recognized and liquid, which is important if you ever decide that you want to sell.
That's a great tip for our listeners. Think beyond the American eagle. So what about silver? I know the silver eagles are very popular.
They are super popular. But BGSC also has these things called poured silver bars and shapes. And I think those are really unique. They're literally silver bars cast in different shapes. Imagine having a silver bar shaped like your state or a famous landmark or something.
Okay, that is cool. I like it. It seems like they're trying to appeal to both collectors and investors with those. Now, you mentioned platinum before, and that's the really pricey one, right?
It is. It is. Platinum is much rarer than gold or silver, and it tends to hold its value really well. BGSC has a good selection of platinum coins, like
Yeah.
the Canadian Maple Leafs and American Eagles. But given the price point, those are definitely more of a collector's item.
Okay, so we've got gold, we've got silver, platinum, and then there's copper. And I have to admit, I don't know much about investing in copper.
Yeah, it's interesting. Copper isn't traditionally thought of as a precious metal in the same way as gold and silver, but it is becoming increasingly important in technology, especially with the rise of electric vehicles and renewable energy. All those wires and all those components need copper.
So the demand is going up, which could mean,
Potentially higher prices in the future. It's something to really keep an eye on, especially for somebody who wants to diversify beyond those traditional precious metals. BGAEC even has this 10-pound copper bar. It's kind of a statement piece. It's really something. So let's say our listener is convinced and they want to buy some precious metals from BGAEC. What are their options?
well, they could just buy individual coins or bars,
Yeah.
which is great for someone starting out or looking for specific pieces for their collection. But BGAC also offers something called a precious metals IRA.
Oh, yeah. This is for the listener who wants to invest in precious metals as part of their retirement plan. It's a way to diversify your portfolio beyond traditional stocks and bonds and potentially hedge against inflation.
Okay, so how does that work? Is it like setting up a regular IRA?
It's a bit different. It's called a self-directed IRA, which basically means you have more control over your investments. With a precious metals IRA, you're actually holding physical gold, silver, or other precious metals in a secure depository.
Interesting. So instead of having your retirement money in mutual funds or ETFs, you've got actual gold bars stashed away somewhere.
Exactly. Now, BGAC makes the process of setting up a precious metals IRA sound pretty straightforward. They have like a step-by-step guide on their website,
Hmm.
and they work with a bunch of different custodians, which are basically the institutions that hold your IRA assets.
Okay, well, that's good. Sounds like they're trying to make it easy for people. But what about like the details? Like what's the minimum investment? Are there fees involved?
Yeah, those are good questions. BGASC is very transparent about all that. They state upfront that the minimum investment for a precious metals IRA is $30,000. And yes, there are fees involved, just like with any IRA. But they lay it all out on their website. You can see exactly what you're getting into.
Transparency is definitely a plus. It doesn't seem like they're trying to hide anything.
Yeah.
So let's say down the road, our listener decides they want to sell some of their precious metals. Can they sell back to BGAC?
They can. BGSC has a sell to us service, which is really convenient. It's a pretty straightforward process. You just call for a quote, ship your items securely, and then you get paid.
Okay, that sounds pretty easy. Are there any catches?
Just a couple things to keep in mind. There's a $1,000 minimum for selling, and they outline all the different payment options, like whether you want a bank wire, a check, or an ACH transfer. Each option has its own fee associated with it, so you can choose what's best for you.
Got it. So it's not just about buying. They're there to help you if you decide to sell later on. So it's a nice full circle service they're offering. But now I'm kind of curious. What are people actually saying about BGASC? Are they as good as they claim to be?
Yeah, that's always the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, luckily, there's tons of customer reviews out there, and they paint a pretty compelling picture.
Let's start with the good stuff. I know you did some research on some of the big review platforms. What did you find?
Yeah, so on Trustpilot, BGAC has a fantastic rating, 4.8 out of 5 stars based on over 700 reviews. That's a lot of happy customers. And then over on Shopper Approved, they have a very similar rating, 4.8 stars, based on over 4,100 reviews.
Wow, those are some seriously impressive numbers. What are people saying specifically?
Well, the common themes seem to be affordability, fast shipping, and excellent customer service. People seem to really appreciate how responsive DGASC is, and they say the website is really easy to use and navigate, which, tracks with their focus on transparency and customer experience.
Yeah, it does. So a lot of positive feedback. But I'm sure, as with any company, there are some less than glowing reviews out there too. So what's the other side of the coin?
Yeah, for sure. So we did find that their rating on the Better Business Bureau is a bit lower, 2.5 stars out of 5. However, it's really important to note that this rating is based on only 6 reviews.
6 reviews. That's a tiny sample size compared to the thousands that you were just talking about on those other platforms. Does the BBB give any context for those low scores?
Not really, and here's the thing. BGAS still holds an A+ accreditation from the BBB, which means that they meet the BBB standards for ethical business practices.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder for our listeners to look at the whole picture, right? A few negative reviews shouldn't necessarily outweigh a massive amount of positive feedback.
Exactly. It's all about looking at the overall trend and considering the source.
Okay, so we've got the good, the bad, and maybe the slightly confusing. But let's get down to brass tacks here. What are the main pros and cons of working with BGASC? What should our listener really weigh when making their decision?
Yeah, so let's start with the positives. The first big pro is that vast product range we've been talking about. They've got something for everyone, from the casual investor to the serious collector. Then there's that high customer satisfaction, which is backed up by all those glowing reviews. People genuinely seem to have good experiences with this company.
Yeah, that's huge, especially when you're dealing with something as valuable as precious metals.
Yeah.
You want to know you're working with a company that's going to treat you right. So what else is on the plus side?
Well, their investment versatility is a huge advantage. You can buy individual pieces, build a collection, or invest for retirement with their precious metals IRA. And then, of course, there are just the inherent benefits of precious metals themselves, which is they can act as a hedge against inflation and diversify your portfolio, which are key concerns for a lot of investors these days.
Yeah, those are all really solid points. And their expertise in precious metals IRAs seems like another plus. They seem to have a good grasp of that side of things. But what about the cons? What should our listeners be aware of?
One potential drawback is that the number of products eligible for their IRA program is a bit limited compared to their overall selection. So if you're specifically looking to diversify your retirement savings with precious metals, you might have fewer options to choose from.
Okay, that's a really good point. Something for our listeners to keep in mind. Anything else?
Well, while they do emphasize customer service, some sources did mention occasional issues with streamlining their operations, things like delays in delivery or customer service responses. Now, these seem to be pretty isolated incidents, but it's worth noting if efficiency is a top priority for you.
Yeah, that's fair. And of course, they're primarily an online operation, which is great for convenience. But some people might miss that face-to-face interaction you get with a brick-and-mortar dealer.
Right. And then there's also just, the shipping fees, which can add up, especially for smaller orders.
So a couple things to consider there. But overall, do you think BGAC is a reputable and reliable company?
I would say so, yes. They've risen to the top of the industry pretty quickly, which, suggests they're doing a lot of things right. They seem to be very transparent about their pricing and their policies, and they just have a strong track record of happy customers.
Yeah, and I think their commitment to secure shipping practices is another big plus. People want to know that their valuable metals are going to arrive safely.
Absolutely. And we can't forget that major development, their acquisition by A-Mark Precious Metals. That's a big vote of confidence from one of the giants in the industry.
Okay, let's talk about that. Why did A-Mark acquire BGASC? And what does it mean for their customers?
Well, from what we've gathered, A-Mark is all about expanding its reach and gaining more control over the precious metals market. Acquiring BGSC gives them access to a whole new customer base and a company with a really strong reputation for customer service and fair pricing.
So it sounds like it was kind of a strategic move that benefits both companies. A-Mark gets to expand, BGASC gets the backing of a major player.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how this partnership evolves and what it means for the future of precious metals investing.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, which was copper as a potential investment. You said it's not a traditional precious metal, but it sounds like it's kind of gaining some traction as an investment. Do you think it has the potential to really be a contender alongside gold and silver?
It's definitely an intriguing option. Like we were saying before, we're already seeing how important copper is becoming for things like electric vehicles, renewable energy, all that stuff. That demand is only going to increase in the future.
Right, so we've got scarcity plus rising demand, which equals
Potentially higher prices. And, unlike gold, which is primarily seen as like a safe haven asset, copper is much more tied to industrial growth and technological advancements. So it makes it a potential hedge against inflation in a different way than gold.
That's really fascinating. It's almost like a different flavor of inflation protection. Instead of betting on fear and uncertainty driving up the price of gold, you're betting on innovation and progress driving up the price of copper.
Exactly. And I think BGASC is clearly paying attention to this trend by offering such a wide range of copper products, including those big copper bars we talked about.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to be ahead of the curve and cater to that investor who's thinking a little bit beyond those traditional precious metals. So for our listener who's maybe a little intrigued by this idea of copper, what's your take? Is it worth considering as part of a diversified portfolio?
I think it's worth exploring, especially if you're looking for something that's really tied to the real-world economy and technological innovation. But of course, like with any investment, it's crucial to do your research, understand the risks involved.
Yeah, always sound advice. We never want our listeners jumping into anything without doing their due diligence first. Okay, Tiffany, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. Let's do a quick recap of what we've learned about BGASC.
Yeah, so they're a relatively young company, but they've made a big splash in the precious metals market. They offer a huge selection of gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and even copper products like we talked about. They seem committed to transparency, customer service, and fast shipping.
And their acquisition by A-Mark is a pretty major development. That could signal even more growth and stability for the company.
Absolutely. And they also offer that precious metals IRA option for those looking to diversify their retirement savings.
Now, as with any investment, there are pros and cons to consider.
Yeah, those limited IRA options and the occasional operational hiccups are worth noting.
But overall, it seems like BGAC has built a pretty solid reputation based on their commitment to customer satisfaction and fair pricing.
It's always a good idea to do your own research and compare them with other dealers. But based on what we've seen today, they do seem to be a legitimate and trustworthy company.
Well, this has been another fascinating deep dive, Tiffany. As always, great insights.
My pleasure, John. Always happy to talk precious metals.
And to our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this has given you a much clearer picture of BGASC and what they offer.
And remember, everyone, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing.
Absolutely. Until next time, happy investing, everyone.